Hello, everybody. Welcome once again to another episode of Brainy the RPG Cat. I was supposed to stream Saturday, but I was having a little bit of difficulty, figuring out what to do after having heard the news. Um, oh, I've already made a mistake. Today is Saturday. Yesterday on Friday, I was supposed to have streamed, but I didn't really get an opportunity to because the news had just broke that the Supreme Court had overturned Roe versus Wade, and subsequently is that my Twitter feed and just a lot of other places on the web, I like across my Twitter page, were filled with just discussion about Roe and the political circumstances surrounding it and what the social ramifications are supposed to be. And so there's a lot of people upset. And I recall a very distinct time when I was upset. I will be discussing that a little bit later. When I had started to look for a safe space shortly after another few series of political current events had happened. So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to open up this space for a free discussion about everything that has happened in the past couple of days. What does it mean for our current society? What does it mean for community members, particularly the LGBTQ and high functioning autism individuals that I am always advocating for. So we are going to do that, and so because we are having such a forthwith and frank discussion, I felt it was important to remind everybody in the chat about our zero tolerance policy. If you attempt to bully any individual, you'll be harmed, and you'll be no additional discussion as to why. And so every time that I put this forward, I have a tendency to say is that we're all adults. We all have the ability to see whether or not your language is intended to be damaging to another person, and if we do pick on that, that is what will result in a ban. We will not enter into a conversation about why you're banned. We will not entertain the thought about unbanning you after the chat. Is that we understand that you did something intentionally to hurt somebody else, and therefore we do not want to continue to have you in the community. It's not the nicest solution to things, but I believe that it is the most honest and is the most forthwith. So let's go ahead and let's head over to my happy place, which is, of course, my continuously running game of Animal Crossing, and then we'll begin to have this time together. So, I personally, I wasn't entirely sure what to expect from tonight's stream. There's a very good chance that, this all might end up being dead air, and, I won't have made a discussion about this, and I'll decide what to do with the VOD when it comes to that later. There's a part of me that is actually debating whether or not to keep this VOD up, afterwards. It's just, it's. I feel as though it is important to, bring these topics up as they happen, and we will talk about them as much as we need to. And really, that's all there is. So here I am, Brainy the RPG cat, human avatar, cat character, and this is my Animal Crossing village. Let me just give you a little bit of a quick tour. Alright, so, I'm having a bit of a malfunction right now with my microphone. My microphone is just picking up a lot of background audio, and so, yeah, my lips are going to move automatically every once in a while. There's an awful lot I'm going to do. So this is my main room. So, it has my bed, and it has my couch, and it has my lovely little blue cat tree, and I connect balls in a jar full of yarn balls on top of this clothing rack. Oops, I have been encroached upon by a black sheep named Muffy. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to have a discussion with him. Hope you're ready, cause here I come, Nightshade. All right. You know, now that I've seen the dialogue box, it occurs to me that I should probably shrink a little bit, just so that we will be able to read the dialogue boxes a bit better. So let me just bring myself down a little bit, put myself a little bit more in the corner. All right, so there we are. See, hopefully that'll make things more readable. Let's talk to Muffy again just to be sure. Whoa. I totally lost track of time. I guess I should take off soon. Alright, well, later. I was in the middle of giving everybody a tour. I mean, no offense, but, I've got some other people who are visiting the house right now. Okay, so here, once again, that was my clothing rack, and this is my little gyroid band. I personally like the drummer gyroids the most because I'm a drummer myself, and so I understand a little bit about what goes into putting together a good drum beat. It's also great to have the supplemental beats to this little funk track. KK Cruisin', one of my all-time favorite KK Slider songs, and so I'm still working on renovating my house, and probably a big part of what I'm going to be playing tonight is I'm just going to be putting together some outfits. I'm going to put together some money so that I can pay my rent, and that will be the conclusion of the stream tonight. And so I barely put anything in this room, just a few things that I like, including this gachapon machine. Alright, well. Let's see here. As I almost had my avatar up at the start of the show. I still have yet to see if it's actually going to pop up on this screen. So this is my other room, and so this is a little bit more humble. It's a bit more like a living room. All right. All right. And this is my bathroom. I do have the public bathroom wallpaper up in here, and all white furniture. I have a shower over a mirror for some reason. Single light bulb, and all right, so this is my latest room, and I've been collecting the most furniture for this, and this is basically this is going to be a diner room, and I particularly like the labeled jars. I particularly like the labeled bottles, so I have a big collection of them, along with a slushie machine, an ice cream machine, a jukebox. I still have the same music playing on because I told you I love that track. And so probably something I'm going to do today, I'm probably going to buy the other diner seat. I might want to buy multiples of those after a while. Probably, just enough in order to put two in the room. And so I don't have it downstairs yet. So I've got to work on paying my rent so that I can get my downstairs. So my main source of income is this great big pile of vegetables right here. I'm glad that they added vegetables. I'm glad they added cooking, although there isn't really much of a mechanic to it at the moment. So I decided to save my vegetable picking because I knew I was going to play this game on stream tonight. So let's go ahead and let's get to picking produce, and we'll get to talking about tonight's topic. So, Roe versus Wade was overturned. Everybody was on the watch for it in the weeks preceding this. And, well, it is really just that, the most immediate thing happened and the most inevitable thing happened. It doesn't engender that anybody should be happy about it. Particularly, all the discussion leading up to the event, and how unpopular that would have been with the American public would have been sufficient in order to describe this process to people, about how what a bad idea it was. But we have a little bit of a problem here when it comes to American politics, and I put a specific term to it. I tend to call it a crusade. And I tend to say that, well, nothing's more appropriate than calling something a crusade, when you consider it being like the Crusades, when that period of time in medieval Europe, when a large amount of people were being persecuted for their religious beliefs. And so it's a situation where, people find their single ambition to undo certain kinds of laws to the misfortune of individuals who are on the other side of these laws. And so, it could be any kind of... using the Crusades is usually a religious... example, but it doesn't really have to be religious, because we live in a society that has, a much greater amount of diversity than that. Is that we live in a society where individuals identify with themselves on lots of different factors: their race, their sex, their social class, whether it's gender and it's a lack of gender, whether it's an identification as an American or as an individual from another country. And all of these things are perfectly valid, because it's really just a matter of, self-identification. But the thing is that this really seems to be a lot more severe in a very significant way, because we are really targeting a law that is completely and totally divided along the lines of gender. And it's not to say that you're capable of being unsupportive, but it's really just the fact that the real marginalized community that is targeted in this kind of situation is a specific gender. And so I don't want to go into a situation where I have to say, well, there's a gender binary, there's only a difference between men and women, and it's really where we're hurting a greater amount of the population when it comes to the decision the decision of overturning Roe versus Wade, because that's not the situation. You don't necessarily have to be identify as female in order to be supported by women's health care. Well, what we consider to be a women's health care. This is how close together all of these discussion points are. So let me take a look here. Is that I think my pockets were too full, so I'm having a hard time picking flowers at the moment. So earlier today we did have we had the bug we had the bug contest, and So I managed to snag some goodies from the book contest, and also made a lot of money that I've still kept in my pockets for tonight. Um, well, anyway, where was I? So it's really, yeah, you're in a situation where you have a certain internal anatomy. You have certain kinds of body parts, and you need to be able to be responsible for yourself, and you need to be able to go to the doctor, and you need to be able to support. Yeah, and you need to be able to support your own bodily health, and so there's expectations when it comes to when it comes to groups of people in this situation. You have to uh, care about you have to care about specifically scientifically what is occurring within within the body of your patients, and you need to be able to provide that care, and that care should be something that is not um, abridged, is not mitigated by, and is not a proponent to a person's personal beliefs. Because we understand, we do everything we can in order to make medical science something that is universal, and something that is helpful to everybody that we possibly can. And so it's not even, this is not even a situation where I'm complaining about the doctors. The doctors are the doctors are intelligent, and the scientific people, and they're doing everything that they possibly can in order to support the community. What we're receiving blowback from is we're receiving blowback from individuals like politicians. And this is inevitably brings me full circle. This is what brings me to my belief that this is a crusade, because when you go on a crusade, is that you just kind of work your way towards coming out with a single goal. The original crusades were about the original crusades had to do with the fact that it was believed at the time period that any non-Christian religion was something that had to be done away with, and you had to do everything that you possibly could in order to convert individuals to Christianity. And so already, just by saying that, there's already something that rings, well, just immediately sounds unjust about that statement. I know that if you are a Christian, it is part of an individual's mission in order to discuss Christianity with others, and help them use Christianity in order to help them see the develop within themselves changes that will help them to better understand the love and care of God and Jesus, and the deities that are involved in the practice of Christianity. And so that's perfectly fine. That is something that is perfectly reasonable. But I think probably one of the things that the issue with the Crusades is that they were going out, they were using every single tactic possible in order to reach the end of individuals' conversions to Christianity. They used everything along the line. They used violence, they used torture, they used death, And so really it's just the fact that, you had, what was effectively, a group of law enforcement individuals traveling to different parts of Europe with the intent to convert people into Christianity. is inevitably is why Europe became such a Christian country. You know, um, so to use the crusade metaphor when it comes to Roe versus Wade, it is to say that it has been very important for a very long time for a lot of people on the right wing side of the government in order to overturn Roe versus Wade. It has been a it has been a purpose for them. Uh, it has been a purpose for them as long as Roe versus Wade has been a law, which is a span of time going back about 50 years. So right now it's 2022. So if you were to say 50 years from 2022, you would go back to 2012, you would go back to 2002, you would go back to 1992, you would go to 1982, and then you would land on 1972. If you're talking about a whole 50 years. And, I'm only estimating and approximating here. I don't know what the specific dates are. So this is a period of our history. Some people feel like it's a very long time ago, but really it was just around the corner. This was our parents' generation. This was a time period of approximately about 1967. So that's the thing, is that the fact that Roe has been in law for 50 years. 50 years is a long time to some people. It's half people's lifetimes. But, in terms of in terms of just how it is compared to the history of the country, it's still, is something that, happened not in our lifetimes, but within our parents' lifetimes. And that's significant, too, because we tend to have discussions of civil rights within the same envelope. We tend to say, well, the thing is, the civil rights movement was something that happened during our parents' generation. It was something that happened 50 years ago. And and so, you can talk to your parents about, where they were when this and this and this happened, everything that you have read about in your history books, provided you were allowed to read about it in the history books, but that's probably a topic for slightly later. Whoops. I should have sold that stack, but I didn't. Alright. So, I don't know if I've impressed anybody with how I've been discussing all this so far. So, in real life, when I'm not playing a RPG-loving cat on the internet, I am a master's student of communication, and I go to the University of Colorado. So I had only just recently graduated, so that was just a really big milestone for me personally. So I tend to, anytime you talk about any kind of discussion with anybody, okay, this is where my communication understanding comes in. Anytime that you have a discussion with anybody about any topic, what you're effectively doing is you are approaching them from their own intellectual framework. And so this is a very fundamental area of communication. And so, probably the simplest way that we can put it is that we literally describe it as framing. So, the framing of Roe versus Wade, well, first of all, is that it has never been it's never been a law as much as it has been a decision against a decision made by individuals of the Supreme Court. Say that protected a woman's right to have an abortion, and from this point forward, we have used it as the precedent that exists in United States law that will protect all women's individual right to have an abortion. And so the thing is that since the decision was made, and then for 50 years, individuals just continue to debate it. There was never a movement from either political party, either the left or the right, uh, turn it into a law in order to make it into a specific law. And there was lots of a hesitation, even from people who would have potentially been supportive of a law, to not discuss Roe versus Wade because it might have been potentially damaging to their political viewpoint. And so that went on for for this span of time. It went on for 50 years, and there was never an opportunity to say, well, we're not going to ever, take this to Congress. We're never going to codify it, and we're never going to make it into federal law. Instead, we are just going to allow Roe versus Wade to stand on its own as a legal decision that provides this protection. But there's always been a problem with that, and this is what has been so exploitable to the American right wing. Is the fact that anytime something is held up as a Supreme Court decision, if the Supreme Court decides to make an alternate decision, then that's all you need to do in order to put down this law. And so, all of this time is that, we've been living in a state of existential dread, knowing that, because as I said, going back to, the doctors that I was just discussing, the doctors know that, now we have the ability to provide abortion services in our clinics. We now have the ability to provide women's health services, related to abortion, advisement, etc. And so we're going to install them, and we're going to make them regular parts of our bye watering can. And so we're going to make them parts of our healthcare practice. I mean, they've as a doctor, as a medical professional, they found the necessity in it. It's necessary in order to provide these services. And so I'm just short one piece of softwood that I'm going to need in order to build a new watering can. Okay, and there it is. Alright. So doctors and nurses and medical professionals in the medical industry at large, has been working very hard in order to provide these services to women. And, they found the validity in it. It can be healthy and beneficial. But still, there is a vein of individuals who have always had a moral objection to abortions, and they have made it into their crusade in order to close down abortions. But there's and this is effectively, the situation where all of this conversation breaks down. This is a situation where this is the part of the discussion where everybody tends to be angry about the circumstances. Huh. I think I might have had more than one watering can in my inventory. I'm partially paying attention to what I'm doing, and I'm also partially having this discussion. So, and so the breakdown of this discussion is always as follows. At this point, that we understand that the process of abortion is something that is can sometimes be necessary for a woman's social, medical, and social and medical health, and so we have developed our healthcare in order to provide for those services. So it is incredibly short sighted for an individual who just uh, disagrees with that on moral grounds to be the person to make the decision in order to take those things away. And so this is how people are currently framing their discussion with Justice Clarence Thomas. Um, Clarence Thomas is that I don't want to go too much about who he is and who his family is and how his decisions have impacted other parts of politics, because I think that we've gotten into a better, well, this is my opinion, I personally believe that we've gotten into a situation where we spend a little bit too much time talking about what is the what is the individual background of a person and how that led to them making the decisions that they made. Because I think in a situation, particularly like in a situation like this, in a situation like with Roe versus Wade, I don't personally believe that what a person's background really enters into this discussion. And so there might be some people who are saying, well, no, well, of course it does, because I'm this and this person, and this hurts me, and this, and and we'll get into that part of the discussion as well. But I think that the issue with overturning Roe versus Wade in this day and age, with 50 years of legal abortion history in the United States, is an issue because we are severely undercutting the ability for a group of individuals to receive their necessary health care. And so I believe that that's a point that is if we lived in a sane society, and I already know where I already know where that one goes. Okay, if we lived in a sane society, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. But the simple fact is that we would be in a situation where we understood that there might be some situations where it would be necessary for a woman to have an abortion. And so I know there's some people talking about the other side of the aisle. Well, these are just extenuating circumstances. We would take care of people when it came to the extenuating circumstances. Well, how would we? Because the larger, more general law is against it. And that's another issue that I think that when it comes to discourse is something that we have we have significantly limited ourselves with, and it's the fact that we have a tendency to say, well, even if a law is repealed, it's not the end of the world. But if that were true, then why repeal the law? If the law isn't particularly harmful to anybody, then why repeal it? Oh, darn it. Well, I have lost a battle with the scorpion. There is something oddly ironic about that. Alright, so where was I? Oh, yes. I mean, why repeal a law? Well, usually people in this situation with Roe versus Wade, people cite, religious reasons. It's against my religion to allow this. So therefore, what I need to do is I need to work to prevent this from remaining law. But the thing, you can't make a statement like that, and then say, well, then immediately afterwards say, well, I don't, even if it isn't law, then some people will be able to do this thing with impunity. The probably one of the more civil arguments about repealing Roe versus Wade has to do with statehood. Is that we want to leave this up to individual states to make this decision. But the issue with that is that, when we're talking about, the body of who this law is encompassing, then we're talking about a literal body. We're talking about individuals with bodies who have had abortions. So if your abortion is legal in one state but illegal in another state, then what does that mean for you as an individual? Immediately, they're going to make decisions about, who gets to be where and why they get to be where, and is due to a woman's reproductive rights. And because it's due to a woman's reproductive rights, I'm saying woman, I think we all know what my definition has been at this point. When we're talking about when we're talking about an individual's reproductive rights, we we have to be able to provide documentation for that individual in order to make a determination whether that individual is breaking the law. So effectively, we're going to have a way in order to inform legal officials, cops on the street, lawyers, and members of the United States court with a notification that this person has had an abortion. And so ordinarily, a person's medical records are supposed to be private. They're supposed to be sealed, and it's really just, it's that we do that for a reason. Is that we do that so individuals won't take advantage, won't take physical, won't take mental advantage, won't ethically or won't emotionally manipulate a person for having a specific type of medical condition. We do this so that individuals don't have to fear being able to find a specific type of job because of their medical history. Well, the fact is that specific protection is going to go right out the window because we have to have a way in order to inform a public that an individual has had an abortion, because the law is in place. So it's really the fact that, the omission of a law makes things a lot more difficult than the presence of a law that permits it. And so that's not a direct quote or anything. It really should be. Let's get somebody big and important to say that at some point. But, and so that's really, the situation that, we continue to be in is that, at this point, it's not even really a societal discussion, and so, I know that people have a tendency to look at, like an argument that I just made, like people who have specific medical conditions. Well, there are people who also have extenuating circumstances, and those things should be looked at by a doctor, and on a case by case basis. But it's not a doctor. It's not just a doctor. If there's an abortion ban, then it's a doctor. It's several people up and down the state law legislative group. It's your police officers. It's your judge. It's you know. So Boyd77 says the rescindance of rights makes it harder for it to become legal again. That's true. It's the fact that I think we're dealing with something that's just a lot more broader than that, though. It's this situation that this has been law for a very long period of time, but it is suddenly not, because individuals don't want it to be anymore, but those individuals are not paying attention to what the broader picture is when it comes to individuals, their health, and their reproductive rights. There is just a very short list of things that we tend to get into, discussions we get into here in the United States about whether or not something should be considered to be legally just. The founding fathers wanted, was this something that is protected to us as a basic human right outlined to us by the Constitution. That's the way that these discussions are usually framed. And the issue with that is that anytime you're talking about the founding fathers, you're talking about people who lived in the 16th century and didn't have the science and the technology in order to support what we're currently proposing as a law. So the response to that is usually well, why are we asking the founding fathers? The founding fathers might not don't have much of an idea when it comes to these sorts of things. And so the people are most definitely talking about the Constitution when it comes to Roe versus Wade. And the issue with the Constitution as well, okay, so we wrote about, we made a certain list of people's unalienable rights, things that we cannot infringe upon using law in the United States. And we have added to the Constitution laws that protect individuals based on things like race, based on things like sex, and that is significant here because this is a whole argument affecting individuals of a certain, well, I don't want to say of a certain gender, but of gender pertaining to their biology. That's a better way of putting it. And so when it comes to, using the Constitution about this to make this kind of argument, the response is simply that we don't expect the Constitution to cover everything that was believed by the Founding Fathers. That's why we occasionally go back and we make amendments to the Constitution. The Constitution wasn't going to have anything about the civil rights of black people. I mean, because, once again, going back to the 16th century, every single individual in the founding Congress was a wealthy landowner who owned slaves. And so I always like to kind of point this out as a tangent, is that, people from that era had a belief that land ownership was something that actually denoted citizenship. And so one of our very first constitutional amendments was to change the fact that only wealthy landowners could vote, to the anybody over the age of over the age of 21 would have the ability to vote. First it was over 21, and then they amended it again, and they turned it into 18. So that's already a precedent that was set by the Founding Fathers that we're not following anymore. You talk about land ownership. I mean, what do you talk about when you talk about land ownership in this day and age? You know, I live in a townhome. I have a lease for the townhome. Does that mean I'm a land ownership? And does that mean I own land, and therefore I have the right to vote? It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way because it doesn't need to work that way. Because we've universally decided that that's not the way that things should go. And so, this is precisely the kind of argument that we're dealing with when it comes to Roe versus Wade. Is that, while you might cite the Constitution and you might cite that this might not necessarily be a right according to the Constitution, well then it kind of wasn't supposed to be. It kind of wasn't possible for that to be a right. And so we expect people to have, a certain kind of, intellectual understanding of situations, of a sense of moral standardization and intellectual reflectiveness when it comes to writing our laws. But, that's really something that we can't prove when it comes to the recent repeal of Roe versus Wade. All we can see is the fact that this law has been around for 50 years, and every single right-wing congressperson worth their cufflinks was going to come in, and they were going to try to make a bid in order to repeal Roe versus Wade. That's, once again, if you're talking about things like perspective and framings, that's the perspective, that's the framing of the situation. The fact that, in this past year when we had 4 appointed Republican Supreme Court judges, the moment that we saw that, we all stood in wait for the moment that Roe versus Wade was going to be repealed, because that's what we understood that they were going to do. We gave them the benefit of a doubt, we had discussions with them, and in the discussions that they said that, well, Roe versus Wade is settled law. It's not anything that we believe that we can necessarily change. Well, they did. At that point, it's really not even, a situation where, that's a situation where they said, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to give it the old college try, We'll see if the nation at this day and age can actually survive without this law. We're going to make every argument against it from this point forward. And, you might think that sounds Socratic. You might think that sounds scientific. But the issue is that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be severely franchised by that in the meantime. And so, this is kind of the point where people will come in and people will, discuss about, government by the people. Did I accidentally make 2 fishing rods? I think I broke 1 fishing rod and then I made 2. And so I think that's really just part of my mental pattern when I'm unconsciously playing Animal Crossing. What I needed was a butterfly net because I wanted to catch the moth outside my door. So people will always talk about, what their rights are, but the thing is, as the late great George Carlin said, rights are just a thing that we made up. You know, there's nothing particularly sacred about it. There's no governing body over it. There's no god of basic human rights. Is that we just make a universal decision that these things are just, and we continue to build upon that over the centuries that our country remains in existence. And so that's coming somewhat full circle with that argument. And then people always argue on the other side of the coin as well. Well, I'm a religious person. What about my right to be a religious person? Well, you have every right to be a religious person. You have every right to believe what you want to believe. You have every right to practice what you want to practice. You have every right not to have an abortion if you don't want to have an abortion. But that's your choice, and so it's not necessarily that the federal government has to intervene on the fact that, this is kind of a corny metaphor, but, this is going to literally be a corny metaphor. Suppose I wanted a corned beef sandwich for lunch every single day. Well, then it is my right to go and it is my right to have a corned beef sandwich for lunch every day. There might be some negative, impactful things about situations involving me having a corned beef sandwich for lunch every single day. Things that I probably shouldn't be doing to myself. I probably shouldn't be doing to my body. But I'm going to do it nonetheless. I had another point when it came to this. So if I want to have a corned beef sandwich every day, is it within my right to suggest that everybody should have a corned beef sandwich for lunch every day? And so this is kind of going into probably one of the most simple arguments when it comes to abortion. Is it can I make other people live according to my standards? I mean, it could be anything. It could be religious doctrine. It's a religious choice of mine to have a corned beef sandwich for lunch every day. Dang it! That's one hard to catch firefly. There we are. It probably already broken my net again. So, I think this is going around and around a little bit because, I'm mostly making these arguments with myself, and I'm mostly just kind of going back to points in my head where, I'm discussing things over. So, I want to discuss something else tonight, and it really is... The reason I decided to frame tonight's stream this way is that I chose a very specific game to play while having it just chatting about current political events, and it is Animal Crossing, and there's a reason that it is Animal Crossing, because when Animal Crossing came out, I think it was roughly around actually no. Okay, so back in 2020, we elected Donald Trump as our president. And so, I was immediately concerned, and I was immediately, I was immediately upset by the fact that, Donald Trump was going to become president, particularly because I was concerned about how that was going to affect my personhood. as a Hispanic citizen of the United States. And so, okay, so, once again, IRL. I'm not really a talking cat that lives in a mystic library in the Dungeons and Dragons canon continuity. Am a I am Hispanic. My entire family is Mexican. Comes from different small villages in Chihuahua, and I am a second generation son of an immigrant. And so, a lot of Donald Trump's rhetoric at the time had to do with how he was going to provide nationwide policing for individuals, for illegal individuals. And so this was coming slightly off an already existing law in the books in the state of Arizona that forced individuals, in order to carry passports and keep them in their back pockets in the event that they could be pulled over by any police officer in Arizona, and that police officer in Arizona would have the right to look at your papers. They would have the right to look to see if you are an American citizen based on your paperwork. So the very first thing I did when I learned that Donald Trump was going to be president was that I went to my local post office. I did a renewal of my passport, and I asked them to additionally give me a little laminated card that serves as my second ID. It's my passport ID. This is an additional step that I needed to do in order to protect myself in the event that I might get pulled over by a police officer and I might be asked about my legal status as a Hispanic individual. Not even, I look the same as any other Hispanic person on the street. If it's possible. I have lost another battle against the scorpion again. If it's any at all possible for me to fit the profile of an illegal immigrant, then that person has now been given the lawful right to ask me. And I have to come up with a way to prove it. And this is going back to some of the Roe versus Wade arguments I was making before. If you're a person who has who has had an abortion in this state, and then you go to another state where there's an abortion ban, how are you going to be able to legitimize yourself in some situations, particularly in situations when it comes to dealing with law enforcement? So, and this is significant to bring up because I think, well, probably not more than a few months ago, Texas passed an abortion ban law, and this was while Roe versus Wade was still considered to be a law. It was still a valid decision. It was still considered to be a law. Texas passed an abortion ban that had stated that not only could you not have an abortion, but the fact that anybody who potentially aids you with in having an abortion, a doctor, a nurse, or an individual who drives you in their car to the abortion center would all be able to have criminal charges leveled against them. And people were, just immediately shocked by this law because, effectively what you were doing is that, at that point, police officers, members of law enforcement don't have to be the ones to stop and question you about what your abortion status is. Is that just absolutely any citizen that has absolutely any reasonable cause to believe that you had an abortion can be the person to could be the person in order to put you before a court and put you in trouble with the law. I'm familiar with these sorts of things. I'm familiar with these sorts of things because it's, in so many ways, this is exactly how the immigration laws are written. You look like a legal citizen on the street, but if you're an illegal citizen, I have the right to know, and therefore I have the right to look into your history, and you have the right to look into your past. Additionally, imagine, that if it doesn't really even have to be a police officer, it could be your neighbor. There's lots of very, very, there's also very, very militant anti-abortion organizations out there, and they have made it, once again, they have made it their crusade to try to limit abortion for as many people as they possibly can. And by using the Texas law, they can do that because they can really set it up so that, they can just have individuals who are part of their group serve as abortion bounty hunters. Is that if they have even the slightest belief that you're an individual who has been involved with abortion, has been around an abortion clinic, has driven a car to your abortion site, then they will be the person in order to make that phone call. And so they use the term bounty hunting, but sometimes when you say bounty hunting, you feel like money is involved. But in many of these situations, money isn't involved. It's just a moral imperative for some people. It's their crusade. Yay, crawfish. And so this is the thing that's concerning a lot of people because, we're going to be dealing with, a very scary legal situation in this country in general within the next few months because we have very strict laws like the Texas ban that has already been copied in other states like Arizona. And then we have the fact that we no longer have the support of Roe versus Wade, which was previously what we used in order to legitimize our right to have an abortion. I can't help but think about all of that and then, put myself back in that mental situation where, in that mental situation where if anybody could could persecute you based on your known medical history. We have laws in place in order to prevent, to hide your personal medical history in order to prevent other people from persecuting it for you. Do any of these current abortion ban laws sound as though they respect that belief? Maybe what I said before wasn't Socratic, but what I said just now definitely was Socratic. Take that one Socratically. So a lot of the issue that we have with this really does, because I'm looking back at what Boyd E77 wrote, and I'm thinking that, the residence of rights makes it harder to become legal again, but, we've already established that, this wasn't necessarily because this was a law. This was necessarily, this wasn't necessarily because it was law. This was just a legal decision, and we decided to abide by the legal decision for 50 years, with before realizing that it was going to become a law. I mean, so we never even bothered to make it a law. And it's because, yeah, we had 50 years in order to make it a law, and nobody wanted to because nobody actually wanted to deal with the issue. And that's where that situation has left us. I believe that the biggest sins in the United States are the sins of omission. It's not a situation about what we want to deal with. It's a situation of what we don't want to deal with. All right. I am really flush with money at this point. I've got $250,000. I think I'm going to drop some of this off at the town hall and then pay some of my rent. So as you can see, the bug off was here earlier today, and I did play that during the day because I knew when I got here in the evening I wouldn't have an opportunity to play it. So this has been part of a major political campaign of our current president, Joe Biden, and understandably it would be. I mean, that was something that he could certainly see for himself. This is one of the issues I'm going to have to address once again because we can see the writing on the wall. We have X amount of Supreme Court justices in the Supreme Court, and they're completely and totally motivated to repeal Roe versus Wade. It's what we anticipated to happen, and it's what happened. It's heinous, but it's not at all surprising. Let's see, pay from my pockets. Let's do 248. Let's see, 248. So now we just have the million bells to pay off. Isn't that lovely? So I feel as though I neglected to tell the second part of my story is that, okay, so the very first thing I decided to do when I found out that Donald Trump was going to be president was that I went to the post office and I renewed my passport. But the second thing is that, I took out my DS and I started playing Animal Crossing New Leaf. So that was the game on the DS, is that I didn't start with New Horizons here on the Switch. When I first started therapeutically playing Animal Crossing, it was back in the Nintendo 3DS days. And I still have my copy of New Leaf, even though I don't play it very often. Okay, I'm taking a tour on Captain so we can just have some more things to find on another island. Alright. So, the thing is that, I was in a very bad mental place when I first started playing Animal Crossing New Leaf. I was unemployed. I was unemployed. I didn't have a lot of money. I was living in this townhouse. I was living in the same townhouse, but I had my parents' support at the time. And so I wasn't making any of my own money, and so I was just very, very unpleasant. I was very happy. I was very unhappy. I was extremely depressed. I would probably sleep until noon roughly every single day, just just out of avoidance. And the reason that I would go to play Animal Crossing is because Animal Crossing is a game that gives you the ability to do 10 or 11 things to control your virtual life. And a lot of the things that I have been doing while we've been playing here, I've been picking my vegetables, I've been putting together money to pay my rent incidentally being a no interest loan that I can pay off at any time. Wouldn't that be lovely? You know. And so I was in a situation where, reality um, didn't give me any control. And so I just went to Animal Crossing in order to do, several things that I felt that I could be in charge of. And you get rewarded, pretty significantly in Animal Crossing. I just made $200,000 by walking around and picking fruit and chopping trees and, chopping rocks. I wasn't chopping any trees tonight. And so I'll always kind of look at Animal Crossing as, my personal happy place. This is always going to be a game that is there in order to help me, recontextualize my personal emotions. And I'm grateful to that. I'm grateful to Nintendo. I'm grateful to the people who made Animal Crossing. So this is the first time I've seen an island like this. This island has both the bioluminescent moss, and it also has vines. And so I'm probably going to take both of these home to my village. So, like I said, part of what I was going to discuss tonight, was going to be about current events and the Roe versus Wade. The other part was going to be about, what am I personally going to do in order to keep myself mentally healthy and prepared to do the things that I needed to do. And so, I don't want to say that, Animal Crossing, helped maintain my sanity through a very difficult 4 years of a Donald Trump presidency, but what I want to say is that, it helped me understand a little bit about, self-actualization. I was in a situation where I wasn't doing anything. I decided to do anything at all in order to, make improvements, even if it just meant virtually, even if it just meant playing this game. But eventually, I did want to have those changes spill over to my regular life. So, probably one of the very first things I did was I started going to therapy. Along with therapy came a test in order to determine whether or not I was on the autism spectrum. It turns out that I am. And that in itself was a tremendous revelation because, I used to believe that I had ADHD. And, as many people will say, there's a very distinct possibility you can have both ADHD and autism. But from the moment that I came to the understanding that I had autism in addition to ADHD, I began to treat the high-functioning autism. I began to work on understanding myself through the framing of an individual who's a high-functioning autistic, and that helped me out tremendously. I understood things like, I used to think that I had a very severe anger problem. The issue is that, when I'm in a situation and situations make me angry, I have a tendency to have a meltdown. And so that's the thing is that, meltdowns are something that are, just very commonly described when it comes to an individual who has high-functioning autism. So it's really not a situation where, I actually did have an anger problem that I should treat. Is that I'm having a meltdown, and what I should be doing is I should be learning how to mentally recontextualize myself so I'm not as angry anymore. And so you just continue to grow and you continue to make improvements like this. And so after a while, I stopped being a person who was completely depressed and completely unemployed. I went back to school, and my school eventually led me to give me my current employment and my current master's degree. And I'm very grateful for both of those things. But I had to work hard for those things, and I had to put myself in a mental place where I could work on those things. you know. So, it's safe to say that at this point, that's what I mean when I say Animal Crossing did help provide mental support to me, because it helped me to come to the realization that everything that I needed to do in my life had to come from me first. I had to be the one to motivate me to make change in my life, and put myself in situations where I did not feel bad for myself, where I did not feel chronically depressed anymore. You know, and so I'm not saying that, well, okay, everything is fixed now and it's a happy ending. I've still got a long road ahead when it comes to dealing with everything that I just described with you. When it comes to dealing with depression, when it comes to dealing with anger, when it comes to dealing with ADHD and high functioning autism, there's still things that I have to deal with. But now I have a path. Now I have a way forward, and that's really what the most important part of all of this is. You have to motivate. And so motivate is interesting too, because I've gotten that out of an issue of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures, and it was just one of those throwaway geeky things that Leonardo usually says when he's trying to be a leader. It's time to motivate. And I remember saying it to myself over and over again while I was trying to get many of these initiatives done. I was going to say, okay, well, it's time for me to motivate. It's time for me to figure out what it is I want to do today, and how is that going to make a personal improvement in my life. And I continue to say that to myself. I continue to say, well, okay, let's motivate. What's the very next thing that I have to do? And so, along with my own mental issues, is that I also have a tendency to have executive dysfunction. I procrastinate. I procrastinate a lot. Lots of things I probably shouldn't have. Things that were at great risk to even the things that I just told you. Is that at one point I was required to make instructional videos for students as part of my job. As part of my job at the university, and I procrastinated that for a very long time. And right now I'm only just getting to it. I knew that this was something that I needed to do, but I took a long time in order to do it. So things aren't perfect. I know now what I have to do, but it's still just kind of a matter of how I'm going to decide to do things. And this is a question I'm asking myself all the time. Once again, the people who know me also know that this isn't the first time I've tried to be a VTuber. I used to be on Twitch.tv/The Scarlet Derby. My character used to be the Scarlet Derby Wizard. It's a character that I created and I wrote about in a couple of self-published books. And so I was having a lot of difficulty, doing that character simply because, I continue to think about how being the Scarlet Derby was going to affect my what I was going to be able to say on my stream, whether or not I was actually going to be able to do more mature rated streams, whether or not, I was going to be able to do streams like the one I'm doing now, where I'm just discussing very adult subject matters with you. And so I struggled with that a long time just by playing the other character. But since I decided to move to this character, the question I have to ask myself is, what am I willing to do using this forum? And so I made a very big decision today, because I decided to make the decision to talk to you guys about current events and general mental health, which is something I probably never would have done on the other channel, I mean, something that has been very important to me, this has been impressed upon me in therapy, and this has also become very important for me in my personal life, in addition to motivating, it's also important for me to learn to grow. It's important for me to uh, want to conduct myself in a way where I uh, would where I would develop myself in a way where when I come around maybe about 6 months down the line, I want to be a different person than I was before. And so I had a lot of struggles, and so there's a lot of this material that I'm probably not going to get in today. I'll get into it the next time I feel I may have to do a mental health discussion. But is that I was in the situations where I would try a lot of things when it comes to um, media and media design, and I would I'd have a very difficult time finding an audience for things, and then I would feel very personally bad because I feel like if I'm not reaching anything, well, it must be that my work isn't good enough. I feel slightly different about that now. I mean, one of the things that I've just described is that I've described the fact that I decided to um, I decided to change my character. I decided to go start doing streams under a different banner, and a lot of that was actually motivated from a very bad situation. Is that I had an individual um, uh, get really, really profanely angry with me as a result of a misunderstanding that I had posted on their Instagram page. You know. And so it's because I did that, because that happened to me. I went to a point where I said, well, what am I doing here? Why am I trying to continue to bolster this thing that I've been writing for X amount of years, probably something about 7 or 8 years, when it's not going to benefit me in any personal way. And so when it came to developing Brainy, I thought about one or two things, like I thought about one or two things, like what do I really want to do when I with a VTuber platform. And so, being, the RPG cat was one that was pretty significant because, I wanted to make sure that I spent a significant amount of time doing gaming, not just just playing video games, but also involving myself in the tabletop gaming hobbies that I, entertain myself with constantly. I could make that into a part of the stream, and I can make that into content for the stream. And that's one of the reasons I decided to do that. Brainy was a character that I actually created in Dungeons and Dragons, is that he was a part of my Sunday Adventurers League that I regularly do at a local comic book store. And I drew pencil sketches of him in a special notebook that I have that contains character sheets. And, I just really liked who the character was. And so I thought, well, it would be in my best interest if I were going to continue VTubing. I'd play as a character that I had a specific kind of fondness for. And that's really why I decided to go with Brainy. And so, there's a tendency, to think that, people do these kinds of things because there are certain tropes involved, if a person is, first of all, there is a very large amount of fantasy VTubers. There's nothing particularly standoutish about the prospect of being a fantasy VTuber. There's lots of them, and I've been inspired by some of them. I off the top of my head I can already think about Akami, twitch.tv/Akami, and also Barry the Bugbear. People using the fantasy premise in order to, express something about themselves. And so one of the things that one of the personal goals that I have when it comes to running this channel is that I really do want this to be a channel about some of the things that go on in my mind. Some of the issues that I brought up tonight is the fact that I feel as though that at this point now that I am diagnosed as being a high functioning autistic, it's going to be important for me in order to advocate for autism. Autism isn't what a lot of people think it is, and so that is something that I'm going to have to deal with. That is something that I would like to deal with, and I see the opportunity in order to do good charity and advocacy work for autism using this forum. Then I would like to do that, and so that is something that I am working on, and so I want people to actually see Brainy as a character that has some elements of high functioning autism in them. And so people already have this idea of, the absent-minded wizard, stuff that they had picked up from, things from TV shows like Disney's The Sword and the Stone. And so what I want Brainy to be is I want Brainy to be a character that is like that, but also a little bit more realistically grounded. So if you're talking about a character who is, I'm saying this and then at the same time I'm figuring out how to decorate my house with a moss, but, I struggled for a long time, when it came to things like my social skills, even before I realized that I was a high-functioning autistic, is that, I had, lots of struggles with, school. I had lots of struggles with getting along with others. And then, I also had this issue where, it was presumed I had an anger problem, and I would always be getting in trouble in school because I was always acting out, but I was acting out as a result of acting out as a result of being picked on. And that's that's what you call a rich tapestry. That's the very makeup of an individual's psychological profile. So I just have an odd number, and so this is where my personal autism manifests itself. I have an odd number of these glowing mosses, and I want to split them between these two lakes, so I gotta decide where I'm going to put it, where it's going to be perfectly neat. I really can't come up with a place. I feel as though I have more than two lakes. I might as well just put the last piece of moss on the other lake. I'd like to cover this waterfall at some point. I don't know if this will begin naturally growing, or if I'm going to need to make more trips in order to get more moss. And I planted the vines so that I would have some more areas to climb up and down cliffs. I keep going to the Dropbox. Is that, I had put on an ordinance in order to keep the store open later. let's see. So I had 200,000 bells, which I already put towards my payment. I'm already getting close to 50,000 bells again. Today was a very good day money-wise. And so, I'm starting to entertain the idea of, taking what I did with the Scarlet Derby and then applying it to Brainy, but doing it slightly backwards. Is that eventually I would like to start writing comic books with Brainy, and I would also like to start. I would like those to be combination comic books and game books. So use that in order to develop a homebrew version of 5e, which actually has a significant amount of contextual illustrations, character portrayals in graphic novel form, And so I'm developing that, and so eventually I hope I'm going to be able to shop it to some of the local game manufacturers. I'm close friends with some of the people in the gaming convention community, and so I definitely want to show them my work, once I can get it down in a solid way. And so, there's gonna start to be a difference between Brainy, the VTuber avatar, and there's gonna be a difference, and Brainy, who is the character in these game books. And so that's the thing, when I portray this character, I want to make sure that it does still kind of have those elements of it still has those elements that are, of that element of humanization of an individual who has autism, and so I have to work my way towards that as well. So I've talked pretty significantly about who I am as far as my mental state. It's also prudent for me to talk about my status as a member of an LGBTQ community. I consider myself to be gray asexual. Is that I do still have romantic feelings towards individuals. I still have a tendency to flirt with and engage in romantic discussion with some individuals, but other than that, I'm personally not very interested in. I'm not personally interested in sex. I'm not personally interested in a relationship. I'm not. I'm in marriage and children, and so everything. Yeah, just kind of from that point forward. And so, I've always kind of felt, just growing up for the greater part of my life, I felt a disconnect between myself and my sexuality. Is that I kind of felt as though I had, I felt as though, I didn't feel these kinds of feelings as strongly as other people, and that made me feel very inadequate. And so because I felt inadequate, I overcompensated in the ways that you would expect, is that particularly but when I was in the teen and when I was an early adult, and I flirted with a lot of girls, and I ended up saying a lot of inappropriate things that I regret enormously now. And so I've just come to realize is that, that was something that like I said before, that is something that I should always have been approaching from my own perspective. I should have framed it um, from myself outwards, and as opposed to the way society expected me to look at it. And so that's how I decide to. That's how I conduct myself from this point forward, and I'm personally very satisfied with it. Um, you know, so it's immediately funny to say because once again we led in with this when we were talking about current events and specifically Roe versus Wade, and they're saying, well, you know, there's already people saying, well, why do you need to be an advocate for? Why do you need to be an advocate for abortion? You're not even a person who chooses to have sex. And so, that's the thing is that, but that's the very issue is that, I don't have to be a certain kind of person in order to feel empathy for another person. And that's basically where that line lays. And so I think that a lot of people would be very... I think that it would be very helpful, for a lot of people to, come to that understanding, especially when it comes to an issue like Roe versus Wade. You don't have to be a part of a minority group or a group of any kind of racial, sexual, or religious diversity in order to be an advocate for people who are on the other side of the room. I think a very large problem that we have when it comes to the discussion around Roe versus Wade is the fact that, we have a tendency to say that, well, this is Christian, it's Christian for us not to have laws that advocate abortion, and it's Christian, and it's Christian, and it's Christian. And, that's, I don't personally have anything wrong. I personally don't believe that there's anything wrong with being a Christian. As a matter of fact, I'm a devout Catholic. I'm not the best practitioner when it comes to it, but it's really just kind of simply the fact that, for me, being a Catholic is, kind of a matter of family tradition. And so I have an understanding of, using the church as a means to, gather together as groups and make friends and involve yourselves in your community, And that kind of thing is perfectly fine. It's the exact same thing that it's the exact same thing that I advocate when I go to conventions. When I go to conventions, I'm here to mingle. I'm here to network. I'm here to make new friends. I'm here to understand what our blanket causes are, our blanket discussions are. Get involved with groups that I happen to be that I belong to, like the tabletop group, and the tabletop group, and identify with these people in ways that might be beneficial to us all. I hope to be picking up some of those charities that I previously mentioned as a result of meeting up with people who are in who are at conventions. I go to church on Sundays with my mother, and there's always a very specific reason for that, and this is a very interesting story. Is that I don't know how familiar people are with the show All in the Family these days, but there was a very poignant episode of All in the Family where Edith Bunker nearly gave up her faith. And so what had happened in that situation is that the Bunkers used to have a friend who was trans. She was a cross-dresser, and she used to be a cross-dresser in cabarets, in like cabaret shows and things like that. And she was going to come over to the Bunkers' house for Christmas dinner, but on the way, She ran into a group of ran into a group of thugs, and finding out who she was, they beat her to death. And this is the way that the story went inside of the show. And so, because as a result of that, my that Edith Bunker was getting ready to give up her faith. She was, at the time, she was the only person who was in the Bunker household that regularly went to church. And so this didn't sit right with everybody else, because Archie Bunker doesn't go to church just because he has a principle about women's work, and it is women that go to church. So he was personally very upset about the fact that his wife was losing her faith. Because he was the only one who was representing the family in a religious context. So she wasn't fulfilling her role. And he also rather nastily compartmentalized the death of their cross-dressing friend by saying that well, this is just the sort of thing that tends to happen to those kinds of people. This is the kind of person Archie Bunker was. He didn't personally feel like he had any kind of responsibility when it came to other people and other people's beliefs. And so that's what always kind of stuck with me. This is a lesson that I learned from this one television show. I regularly go to church with my mother. I'm not the most... I'm personally not the most religious person, but I will always go to church with my mother for the simple reason that I don't want her to feel completely left out because she has a certain kind of belief. Just for the same reason that I don't want to be left out, because I'm a certain kind of way when it comes to just all these little things that I've described, all these little things that make up life, all these little things that make up who I am. I don't want to feel left out, and so I try to do everything that I can to associate with other people, so that they don't have to feel left out for who they believe that they are. And that's the main reason that I still continue to go to church. And so it's all of these little things, is that we all kind of make personal decisions about what we're willing to do and what we're not willing to do, and we all have very personal reasons for deciding how we choose to conduct ourselves morally and how we choose to do not. I would never tell the All in the Family story to somebody who, something terrible happened in the church. They were abused, they were molested, something like that. And, so they don't find any kind of safety and security when it comes to going to church. And that's perfectly fine too. Because, if a person, does experience something traumatic, then, they shouldn't have to be in a situation where those sorts of things make them uncomfortable. And so I want to, and this is what I want to be an advocate of more than anything else, is that, I want to show people that, I have respect for them, even though that we don't personally agree on situations. And so, like I said, this is a hard thing to do, especially right now, especially in the wake of really big polarizing situations like the Roe versus Wade decision. We can't, it's not necessarily that I can be in a position where I can agree with people who want Roe versus Wade repealed. That just doesn't work. It doesn't work in the logical makeup of everything that I have developed up until this point. But having said that, I'm going to try to listen to them. I'm going to try to understand them, but, it more than likely isn't going to personally change my opinion, but it is still something that, I want to try to engage myself with. Like I said, is that principally I consider myself to be a student of communication. Is that I do everything in my power in order to develop myself as an individual who listens to others and tries to come up with the most reasonable answers and the most reasonable discussions that I possibly can develop, because that's what I was trained to do. I was trained to be an education master. I was trained to be a communication master. Sorry about that. Oh, was also gonna Google whether this painting was real. It probably isn't. All right. And it's hard because like I said before, everybody finds themselves in very specific, very individual situations, and they have to determine for themselves, what is good and what is bad in this world, what they're willing to put up with, and what they're not willing to put up with. What I work to do is I work to be a person who tries to provide as much understanding of that as I possibly can. And it can't be blanket. It can't be a fair, I can't give a fair fully agreeing response to the other side of the aisle when it comes to abortion. I can't do that because there's something about that just morally does not ring true to me. Oh boy, Harriet walked into the shot. She's just her big old hair poof. And so that's the situation, is that I'm not in a position to agree with you. But I'm also not in a situation to think that you're the worst person in the whole world. We all have our reasons. But even we all have our reasons, and even though principally I'm not going to follow you, I do want to still be a person who is listening, who has the capability of discussing with you and then finding what the differences and what the moral situations are when it comes to these kinds of situations. So. I think this is a fake portrait, and it's because the person in the front of it is supposed to be wearing a hat. And that's really, that's the balancing act that every person has inside of them. They have to learn, what they're made of, what their principles are, what their values are, how they are affected by their own personal background, and how they are going to react to other people who have different opinions than they do. Like I say, it's not easy. Like I say, I'm disciplined in this, but I don't believe that I have the answers. Maybe someone will come along that's a lot smarter than I am, and they'll be able to figure all of this out. Develop a solution that'll make everyone happy. But in the meantime, I just want to show you that I have my ear to the ground. I want to be able to allow this to be an intelligent discourse. And I feel like, inevitably that's what we all want this to be. We want things to be the way that they were, right? Here in the United States, particularly, we want things to be as good as they are written in our Constitution, in our Bill of Rights, in the Declaration of Independence. We had lots of good, lofty ideas when it came to founding this country. But the issue is that we're human beings, and we rarely ever live up to those standards. It would be beneficial if you were a person who tried to try to do everything in their power not to wreck every principle that we have, which is what many people are saying that this decision has been. So I think that this is something that, we need to work on in our current culture. And this is something that, we need to work on in very lofty places, such as in very lofty areas, such as in our politics. Thorn the Viking, thank you very much for following. And thank you very much for the raid. Thank you. Everybody coming over from Centaur Raven Feathers channel. Centaur Raven channel. Jesse Gray, 805. Thorn the Viking. Yeah, Jinso Striker, thank you for following just now. So you guys caught me in a little bit of a little bit of Zen discussion mode, but thank you everybody for coming in. You guys are fantastic. So I know that tonight has been a rough week, so I have just decided to dedicate tonight's stream to playing a little bit of chill Animal Crossing and discussing any of the events that have been gone on this weekend, any of how anything that might have personally affected you. So if you guys want to join in this conversation, feel free to talk about it in chat. But generally, I have moved slightly on from Roe versus Wade, and I've since been talking about a lot of the more moral impetuses of my channel, like advocating for the autism spectrum, LGBTQ, attitudes towards providing open political and civil discourse. So if you want to join me, and if you want to put your 2 bits in on any of that, then I'm definitely here. I'm here to listen. So I'm rapidly running out of things to do. I think the very next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a Nook Miles ticket, because I've already taken the boat trip. I should take the plane trip as well. I wonder if I have enough miles for it. One thing I should do is I should cash in my app miles before I buy a plane ticket. So yes, thank you, Thorn the Viking, for raiding. Something that I should probably do. I should give you a shout out. Here we are. They were last playing Just Chatting.
I gotta pop a popper onto the table.
This looks very interesting.
No, you cannot play the game.
It's got to be some kind of turn-based or real-time strategy game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's got the stretches. Oh yeah, the stretches.
So, as I had been mentioned before, is that, I am principally educated in communication. And so I began my communication education at roughly around the year 2010, when I took it as my minor for creative writing. And then I've eventually progressed to becoming a master's at it. And so communication has become really important to me. I think I've expressed that a lot. But So I tend to understand. I have a tendency to believe that. Oh, I didn't actually buy the Nook Miles ticket. Anyways, I have a tendency to believe that if everybody were to work a certain amount on their level of communication, then we wouldn't have a lot of the issues that we're having in our modern times. All the issues that we have with internet trolling, all the issues that we have with the very loud flame war arguments that that we used to have in forums on the past, but now we have them regularly on websites like Twitter and Facebook. Um, you know, as soon as people have the tool set, as soon as people have the abilities in order to have a rational discussion and a rational discourse, then that's what they're going to try to do. At least that's what my personal experiences have been. Now that I know these things, I do everything I possibly can to use them. So, one thing that I try to work on, now that I am, at the pedagogy level of my education, is I try to advocate for teaching communication at increasingly younger ages. I want to see it. I got my first communication education when I was in college. Even going as far back as community college, and I was only taking them as elective courses, but also I would like it to be taught in high school. I would like to be taught it. I would like it to be taught in middle school. So nowadays, we do things like internet safety. We teach internet safety in middle school level computer labs. And so that is something that I think that I would be. Oh, I bought a bell voucher. Okay, well, nothing wrong with more money. That's what I want to buy. Now I don't have enough miles for it. Well, I messed this up. Put around a little bit more until I can get 2,000 more miles. So I would like it to be taught, in middle school in environments that are right next door to teaching people internet safety. Because, the first thing, when a person is in a situation they're going to get on the internet, people worry about them getting trolled. People worry about, eventually some bad actor, eventually some, individual who is just going to try to make you angry for their own amusement is going to pop up. And you've got to learn not to take that personally. And that's really the first step towards, learning to have a civil conversation. You know that you're arguing, you know that you're operating in good faith. How many miles did that give me? Okay, now I have enough for the Nook Miles ticket. So, I used to have a hard time communicating. I used to be I used to be a shy little kid, and I used to I used to have all these issues, all these socially awkward issues that I now understand make up my high functioning autism. But I can only imagine, what kind of issues kids are having these days, particularly when it comes to, living in an internet environment. I wasn't born with the internet. The internet came around roughly when I was like 14 or 15 years old, and I've been on it ever since. But, uh, kids are getting involved in the internet at much younger and younger ages. And so I can imagine there's just all of this rather unnecessary social pressure these days that kids are experiencing at younger and younger ages. Another thing that just greatly concerns me that it's not exactly the same thing, but it is just kind of in the same spirit, is the fact that so much of this modern day politics really just kind of tends to exhibit this a tendency to keep people in the dark when it comes to certain initiatives, certain plans, certain agendas. You know, well, first of all, I just kind of feel like that's not something that actually works. I think people are a lot more intelligent than we give them credit for, particularly in the political field. I don't think it's anything that's actually works, but that's the thing is that we have individuals who call ourselves our leaders, you know, who really really kind of hope that we would be in the dark about certain subjects, and that concerns me very greatly. Say, why is it that we need to be the naive ones in the relationship? That's a question that we need to be asking ourselves. And so, I could go off on a tangent, talk about, all sorts of, Orwellian principles, like leadership and, but I don't feel like it's necessary. At this point, you don't even need to read in a book. It's written on the wall. Let me put it that way. I remember growing up, and I had gotten an education in certain things that I probably wouldn't have if I had gone to things like public school. I went from being a private school student to a charter school student, and it's really just largely to the fact that everybody could see that I was very intelligent, but they could also see that I was very, very unruly. So, I know people have, all sorts of socio-political issues when it comes to private and charter schools, but for me, personally, it was necessary for me to, approach my education at a certain level of maturity. I was also very happy when, I was able to make the shift from private school to charter school because it basically meant that, I didn't have to be paying $1,000 in order to get the level of intellectual discourse that I was actually capable of at a very young age. There's no easy way to put it. I was smart, and I was smart and weird when I was a kid. Now, as I'm an adult, I can understand that I'm a high functioning autistic. And so, I had a really great mentor, for throughout most of my high school days. Her name was Amy Dalzell. She is a communication professor now. We still continue to talk. We still continue to chat over Facebook about, what is going on in the political landscape. And we have a great relationship with each other. But what was really significant about her education was that, She had taught me various courses. She taught me English. She taught me economics. She taught me social studies. You know, and so one of the things that she taught me how to do is she taught me how to crack open a newspaper. You know, um, she would ask us to look at a newspaper article and then write an opinion about it afterwards. And this was social studies. It was also very significant that in our English class we read books like Fahrenheit 451. We read Brave New World. And so that's really interesting because, I just mentioned Orwell. You know, it's the fact that, we have all of this modern dystopia and sci-fi, and, people are reliving it. People are bringing it up again in modern day discourse because they've already seen it happen before in the work of fiction. People are very glib to say that, this used to be fiction, but now it's nonfiction. George Orwell has now officially moved to the nonfiction section. And that's the way that these things are usually put. So that's the thing is that I can't say that everybody read those books at my reading level, but I got that opportunity to. All right, well. I'm getting close to the end of the stream at this point. I've been on for 2 hours. I've talked up and down all of the discussion points. I've given you all my perspectives on a lot of different topics. And, I have virtually cleaned out the entirety of my Animal Crossing village in the process. So, yeah, we're going to be getting off soon. All right, so, well, thank you, everybody. Particularly, thank you, Thorn the Viking, for providing the raid, and thank you to Jinzo Striker, Centaur Ravenfeather for chatting. Thank you to Boydie77 for chatting. You guys are fantastic. I don't have the biggest audience, but I do believe I have the most engaged audience. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into tonight's chat. I have talked very longly and languidly about discussions that I wouldn't ordinarily have in this channel, so we will be back this coming Tuesday with hopefully some new RPG and tabletop RPG content. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, everybody who's followed. Be sure to also follow me on Twitter if you want notifications about when I'm live. And now let's do a raid. Let's see, who should I raid tonight? I think I would like to pay a visit to Polly B from the 303 right now is in the middle of playing Team Sonic Racing, and he is also been working on a Sonic Team charity that supports LGBTQ support charity. So that is definitely worth paying a visit to. So first of all, let's give him a shout out. 303. All right. Last playing Team Sonic, well, currently playing Team Sonic Racing. How do you like that? And so this probably had to have been from his stream that was just a day ago where he was playing. He was playing
at least I can go the easy route
new
now.
Sonic collection, Sonic Origins. I'm looking forward to playing that.
Are you kidding
I'm looking
me?
forward to playing all of the old Sonic games
hilarious.
as a single game. That's what you're allowed to do in that. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's head over to his channel. Let's see. Alright, well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for indulging me in my discussion about current events. Thanks for participating in this really cool Just Chatting stream with me. And I'll be back on Tuesday with more RPG content, because I'm the RPG Cat. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Good night.